Welcome to Martha Family Secret Stories, thanks for your service. That's what the text said. 4 words. From my own sister. Attached to a photo of a brand new restaurant sign, glowing and beautiful in the afternoon light, paid for with the Lakehouse my grandmother left me in her will. I was sitting on a cot. 6,000 miles from home. In a temporary barracks I shared with 3 other officers. The blue light of my phone screen was the only light in that room, and my sister's smiling face was staring back at me from that photo. And I sat there. I couldn't breathe. Please subscribe and like this video and listen to my story till the end and let me know which city you're listening from. That way, I can see how far my story has traveled. Because what I'm about to tell you, I need it to reach the people who need to hear it most. My name is Serena Cole. I'm 28 years old. I'm a captain in the United States Army. And this is the story of how my own family robbed me while I was deployed overseas serving my country. And what happened when I finally came home. My grandmother's name was Dorothy. Dorothy May Cole. But every single person who ever loved her, called her Dot. She was 74 years old, 5'2", silver hair she kept pinned back with this little tortoiseshell clip. She had hands that were always warm, even in winter. She smelled like lavender and cedar. She was the steadiest person I have ever known in my entire life. She had a lake house. On Lake Harlan. A property she'd owned for 31 years, assessed at around $450,000. A white house with blue shutters and a wooden dock that groaned a little when you walked on it. There were wind chimes on the porch. I can still hear them. I learned to swim in that lake. I cried on that dock the night before I shipped out for the first time. My grandmother stood behind me with her hand on my shoulder and said 7 words I carried through every deployment, every hard night, every moment I almost broke. This house will always be here for you. Ah. I didn't know, standing there on that dock with the wind in my hair, that those words would become the most bittersweet thing anyone had ever said to me. Now let me take you back. Let me take you all the way back so you understand exactly how this happened. Growing up in the Cole household, the rules were simple. My father, Gerald Cole, sat at the head of every table, literal and figurative. He'd spent 26 years managing a branch of a regional bank before retiring early. He kept the household budget on a color-coded spreadsheet. He approved every purchase over $50. When he spoke, you did not interrupt. When he decided something, you did not question it. My mother, Carol, was the peacekeeper. She hadn't worked outside the home since the early 90s, and her entire identity was wrapped up in keeping the family in line with whatever Gerald wanted. Her favorite phrase, delivered with a tight little smile, was "Your father knows best." She said it so often I still hear it sometimes when I close my eyes. Then there was my older sister, Nadine. 3 years ahead of me. She'd bounced between 4 jobs by the time she was 25, but none of that mattered, because Dad covered her rent and Mom defended every single choice she made. Nadine was the golden child. Pretty, agreeable, always close to home. The daughter who stayed. And then there was me. I was the one who joined ROTC in college. I was the one who announced at Thanksgiving dinner, junior year, that I'd accepted a commission in the Army. My father set his fork down and looked at me like I'd reached across the table and slapped him. "You'll regret this, Serena," he said in front of everyone. "The military doesn't care about you. It will use you and throw you away." My mother pressed her napkin to her lips. Nadine studied her plate. Nobody said a word. The only person who drove me to the airport the day I left for Officer Basic was my grandmother. Dorothy May Cole, 74 years old, hand steady on the wheel of her old Buick. She hugged me at the curb and held on for just a second longer than usual. And then she pulled back and looked me in the eyes and smiled. I didn't know that would be the last summer I'd see that lake house with my name still attached to it. I was 14 weeks into a logistics deployment in the Middle East when I found out she was gone. Not a phone call. An email. From my mother. 4 sentences. Your grandmother passed Tuesday. Funeral is Saturday. We understand you can't make it. The woman who raised me every summer. The woman who taught me to bait a hook and balance a checkbook and hold my head up when men talked over me. 4 flat sentences. Sent at 2:47 in the morning, my time. I went to my commanding officer that same morning. Emergency leave was approved within hours. I called home. My mother answered. Helena, honey, she started, and I said, Mom. I'm catching a flight from Kuwait. I can be there by Friday night. There was a pause. I heard my father's voice in the background. Low. Indistinct. Like a verdict being delivered in another room. Your father thinks it's best you stay, my mother said. You'd just be rushing in and out. Grandma would have wanted you focused on your duty. I want you to sit with that for a second. My father decided I should not attend my own grandmother's funeral. And my mother delivered the message like she was reading a memo. They didn't want me there. At 3 in the morning, local time, I watched my grandmother's funeral on a live stream. The camera shook in someone's lap. 200 people sat in those pews. I recognized most of them. My sister stood at the podium, dabbing her eyes with a tissue, and said, Grandma loved all of us equally. She would want us to stay together. I turned off my phone. I lay in the dark and listened to the hum of the air unit bolted to the wall. Not one of those 200 people called me. 2 weeks after the funeral, I received an email from my grandmother's estate attorney. Attached was the last will and testament of Dorothy May Cole. I read it in the mess hall, surrounded by the clatter of trays and the smell of bad coffee. Her savings and jewelry, divided between my father and me. But the Lakehouse on Lake Harlan, the property she'd owned for 31 years? That went to one person. Me. My throat tightened. I set the phone down. Picked it up. Read it twice more. And then I stepped out into the sun and called home. My father answered. Dad, I said. I just got the will from the attorney. I can't believe Grandma left me the Lakehouse. Silence. The kind that means someone isn't thinking. The kind that means someone is deciding. We need to talk about that, Serena. His voice was flat. Controlled. That house has been in this family for 30 years. Your grandmother wasn't thinking clearly at the end. She seemed clear every time we talked. You weren't here. You don't know how she was. It's what she wanted, Dad. We'll discuss it when you're home. And he hung up. I stood in the sun for a long time after that call. I tried to reach the attorney. He assured me everything was proceeding normally. Nothing to worry about. Everything handled. I should have worried more. I should have pushed harder. But I was running logistics for a forward operating base, sleeping 4 hours a night, and I made the mistake that people who trust their families always make. I assumed they wouldn't actually do it. No response. I called my mother on a Saturday. She picked up and spoke quickly, the way people do when they're trying to get off the phone. Everything's being handled, honey. Have you heard from the attorney? Your father's dealing with all of that. Can I talk to Dad? He's at the hardware store. I'll have him call you. He never called. Something was wrong. I could feel it the way you feel weather coming before the clouds arrive. A pressure in the air. A weight with no name. One night I called my grandmother's neighbor and closest friend, Maggie Soren. She'd lived 2 doors down from the Lakehouse for 20 years. Funny you called, dear, she said. I saw a for sale sign near the lake last month. I stopped breathing. Couldn't tell which property from the road. Might be the Hendersons finally listing. I told her it was probably nothing. I hung up. But my stomach already knew what my mind refused to accept. It took me 40 minutes to find the county assessor's website. My hands were shaking so badly I mistyped the address twice. I was sitting on the floor of the communications tent, laptop balanced on my knees, the overhead lights buzzing. Past midnight. I'd waited until no one else was around. The page loaded. Property address, 1140, Lakeshore Drive, Lake Harlan. Owner of record, transferred. Sale date, March 14th. Seller, Serena Cole, via power of attorney, represented by Gerald H. Cole. Sale price, $450,000. I read it 3 times. Serena Cole. My name. My signature. On a document I had never seen. For a sale I had never authorized. On a date when I was standing in a warehouse outside Kuwait City counting pallets of engine parts. The screen blurred. I wiped my eyes with the back of my hand and read it again. Then I called my father. He answered on the second ring. Casual. Easy. Gerald. Hey. Did you sell the Lakehouse? 5 seconds of silence. I counted every one. It was the right thing to do, Serena. His voice didn't waver. Not even a little. Your sister needed the capital. The restaurant is an investment for the whole family. You'll understand when you get home. You forged my name. I made a decision for this family. That's what fathers do. I hung up. I didn't cry. I didn't throw the laptop. I sat there on the floor of that tent with the buzzing lights above me, and something inside me changed shape. It didn't break. It hardened. That was the moment I stopped being his daughter. Not legally, not yet. But in every way that mattered. The woman who would have begged, who would have argued, who would have crumbled. She was gone. What replaced her was a plaintiff. 2 days later, my sister sent me a photo. A restaurant sign, hand-painted, gold on dark green. And below it, a single line, "Thanks for your service." She named the restaurant after our grandmother. The grandmother whose lake house funded every single square foot of it. And she sent me a smiley face. I didn't respond. Not that night. Not for 3 months. Because while my family thought I was too exhausted and too broken to fight back, I was building a case. Part 2 is coming, and you are not going to believe what the forensic examiner found on that forged document. I want you to picture something. Picture yourself 6,000 miles from home, lying on a cot in the dark, and your phone lights up. It's your sister. She's sent you a photo of a beautiful new restaurant sign. Gold lettering. Hand-painted. Pendant lights visible through the glass door behind her. White tablecloths. Candles. She's wearing a chef's apron and her arms are spread wide and she's grinning. The name of the restaurant? Dot's Table. Named after our grandmother. Dorothy. Dot. The woman who left me the lake house in her will. The woman whose $450,000 were now Edison bulbs and commercial ovens and a custom sign. And below the photo, my sister wrote, "Thanks for your service." Grandma would have loved this. I stared at that message for a very long time. I left the briefing I was supposed to be in. I walked back to my quarters. I sat on the edge of my cot. And I opened my laptop. I typed an email to Major Daniel Reeves. He was a JAG officer, Judge Advocate General's Corps, a military lawyer stationed at the same base. I'd met him during a pre-deployment briefing. He'd given a lecture on service member legal protections. I remembered thinking at the time that I'd never need any of that. I was wrong. Subject line, "I need legal advice." It's personal. I attached 3 things. The county assessor record showing the sale. A screenshot of my sister's text. And the PDF of my grandmother's will. Then I closed my laptop and sat in the silence. I did not text Nadine back. Not that night. Not the next day. Not for 3 months. My family interpreted my silence as defeat. They believed the distance and the deployment and the weight of everything had done what they always expected it to do. Made me disappear. Made me too tired and too small to fight back. But I wasn't disappearing. I was building a case. Major Reeves didn't do emotion. He did procedure. We met the next evening in his office, a plywood-walled room with a folding table, 2 chairs, and a stack of binders taller than the desk lamp. He'd already reviewed my email. Were you stateside on the date of the sale? No. Did you sign a power of attorney? No. Did you authorize anyone, verbally, in writing, by any means, to act on your behalf regarding that property? No. He wrote something on a yellow legal pad. Didn't look up. Then what we're looking at is forgery. And depending on jurisdiction, possibly wire fraud if the funds were transferred electronically. He set his pen down. There's something else working in your favor. You were on active duty under federal orders. The Service Members Civil Relief Act gives courts broad discretion when a service member's rights are violated during deployment. It won't be the basis of your civil claim, the forgery does that on its own, but it tells the court exactly who your father chose to victimize. He paused. Someone who couldn't fight back because she was serving her country. The room was very still. Can I handle this quietly? I asked. Within the family? Major Reeves looked at me. He had the kind of face that had stopped pretending a long time ago. Serena. First time he'd used my name. They forged your signature on a legal document and sold your property. This is not a family disagreement. This is a crime. I sat with that a long time. That night, I started a folder on my laptop. I labeled it Harlan. Over the next 3 months, it grew thick. And while I was building that folder, quietly, silently, methodically, my family was unraveling around me without even knowing it. I have to stop here for a second because I know some of you are sitting with something heavy right now. Maybe it's not a house. Maybe it's money. Maybe it's an inheritance. Maybe it's your name being used without your permission. Whatever it is, you are not crazy. You are not dramatic. Drop a comment below and tell me your city and whether you've ever had someone in your family do something that you never thought they were capable of. I read every word. Keep going, because it gets so much deeper. My silence drove them crazy. Truly. 3 weeks in, my mother started calling. I let every call ring through. The voicemails stacked up like geological layers, each one revealing more pressure, more desperation, more guilt. Week 1, Serena, honey, why aren't you picking up? I'm getting worried. Week 2, your father is hurt that you're ignoring us. We're your parents. Week 3, is this about the house? We did what was best for the family. You're being selfish. She texted too. Long threads that swung between worry and accusation. I can't sleep. Are you safe? Followed 12 hours later by, I didn't raise you to be this petty. Nadine sent photos of the restaurant interior. Freshly decorated. Every table lit with candles. Wish you could see this in person. Mom's been crying because of you. Because of me. Because of me. My father sent exactly one message. It arrived at 6 in the morning my time. No greeting. No sign-off. When you're ready to act like an adult, call me. I read every word they sent. I screenshot every message. I saved every voicemail. I forwarded everything to a dedicated email address that Major Reeves helped me set up. Each item logged with a date, a time, and a sender. At night, while the base slept, I built a timeline on my laptop. The date my grandmother died. The date of the funeral. The date the power of attorney was notarized. The date the house was sold. The date the funds were transferred. The date of Nadine's text. Every single date cross-referenced with my deployment orders, which placed me firmly on the other side of the world. Every message they sent, dripping with guilt and manipulation, they were building my case for me. And they had absolutely no idea. Major Reeves connected me with a civilian attorney named Rebecca Hale. She practiced out of Raleigh. Specialized in real estate fraud. Had a reputation for being thorough in the way a surgeon is thorough. Precise, unhurried, unsentimental. Our first video call happened at 11 at night my time. Her office was right behind her. She'd already pulled the public records. "Walk me through the family dynamic," she said. "No small talk." I gave her the short version. She listened without interrupting. Then she turned her screen to show me a document. "This is the power of attorney your father filed with the county. It authorizes Gerald H. Cole to sell the property at 1140 Lakeshore Drive on behalf of Serena Cole." She zoomed in on the bottom of the page. "That's supposed to be your signature." I looked at it. The handwriting was close. He'd practiced. But the slant was wrong. The way the letters connected. The small details only I would notice. "It's not mine." "I know." She scrolled down. "The notary who certified this is a man named Gary Parsons. Licensed notary. And here's the part that matters." She paused. "He and your father worked together at the same bank for 9 years." The air left my chest. Standard procedure requires the signer to appear in person before the notary. Neither happened here. Your father walked in with a forged document and his old colleague stamped it. What's the penalty for that? Forgery of a deed in this jurisdiction carries 4 to 25 months in prison and a permanent criminal record. She paused. For your father. The notary could face his own charges and will almost certainly lose his commission. I said nothing for a long time. That's my father. Rebecca's voice softened, just slightly. I know. But he made that choice when he signed your name. She told me one more thing before we hung up. Serena, the restaurant your sister opened? If it was funded with proceeds from a fraudulent sale, every dollar is traceable. Every single one. Then I made a call that broke something open in my chest. I called Maggie Soren. My grandmother's neighbor. Her closest friend. She picked up on the first ring, like she'd been waiting. "I need to ask you something," I said. "About my grandmother's state of mind when she made her will." Sharp as a tack, Maggie said immediately. "Dorothy balanced her own checkbook until 3 weeks before she passed. I drove with her to the attorney's office the day she signed that will. She walked in alone. And she walked out and told me, it's done. Serena gets the house." I gripped the phone. And then she said something I never forgot. Maggie's voice got quieter. She said, "Gerald will try to take it. That's why I'm putting it only in Serena's name. Not the family." Serena. Ah. My hand went to my mouth. My grandmother knew. She had seen it coming. She knew her own son well enough to know exactly what he would do. And she had tried to protect me the only way she could. "If you ever need me to say that in front of a judge," Maggie added, her voice steady as stone, "I will. I promised Dorothy I would look out for you. And I don't break promises, sweetheart." After we hung up, I sat alone in my quarters for a very long time. My grandmother had known. She had tried to build walls around me. It wasn't enough to stop my father. But it was enough to prove, if it ever came to that, that she had intended every single word of that will. And then I found out the worst part. It wasn't the house. It wasn't the money. The worst part came buried in a routine email from Maggie, on a Tuesday, tucked between a recipe she'd found in my grandmother's kitchen and a story about the garden. "She tried to call you, you know. For the last 2 years, over and over. She'd phone your parents' house and ask them to pass along the message. She didn't have your military number. She told me once, Serena never calls back. I think she's forgotten about me." I read it twice. Then a third time. My grandmother never had my direct number. She was 77, not comfortable with email, and had always called through my parents' landline. That was how we had always done it. She'd call. They'd pass it along. Or they were supposed to. But I hadn't received a single message from her in 2 years. He answered her calls. He told her I was too busy. He hung up. And then he told me she was slipping, getting confused, losing herself. He cut the line between us, cleanly, deliberately. And he let my grandmother spend the last 2 years of her life believing her granddaughter had forgotten about her. She died thinking I didn't care. I cried that night. Not for the house. Not for the money. For the phone calls that never reached me. For the old woman sitting by the window of her lake house, watching the water, wondering why I'd stopped calling. He didn't just steal my property. He stole the last 2 years I could have had with my grandmother. And no court on earth can give that back. My deployment ended in August. 22 hours of travel, 3 connections, a headache that sat behind my eyes like a clenched fist. I turned my phone on somewhere over the Atlantic. 11 missed calls from my mother. 23 texts. And the most recent one, sent 4 hours before I landed, "We're all coming to pick you up. Dad's cooking your favorite. It's time to put this behind us, honey. We love you." They thought they could wrap me in a homecoming and smother the whole thing with sentimentality. They thought wrong. Part 3 is coming. And what happened when I walked into my own apartment is something I will never forget for the rest of my life. I could see it so clearly. The 3 of them at the arrival's gate. My mother with a handmade sign. Nadine with a bakery box. My father standing slightly apart, arms crossed, jaw set, ready to accept my surrender with a firm nod and a one-armed hug. They wanted to wrap me in a homecoming before I could think straight. Sit me at the dinner table, pass the potatoes, say we're family enough times until it felt true. I'd seen this play before. Every holiday. Every argument. Every time someone stepped out of line in the Cole household. The family reset button. Sit down. Eat. Pretend it didn't happen. Not this time. I called my mother from the plane. Kept my voice flat. "Don't come to the airport. I need a few days to settle in. Helena, please. Your father is trying. I'll call when I'm ready." I hung up. Then I dialed Rebecca Hale. "I land Thursday. When can we file?" Rebecca paused. "The complaint is ready. But Serena, there's something you should know first." Her voice shifted. "The notary, Gary Parsons. He's agreed to cooperate." I closed my eyes. The plane hummed around me. "He's scared," she said. And scared people talk. That night alone in a hotel room near the airport, I almost called my mother. My thumb hovered over her name for a long time. Some part of me, the part that still remembered birthday cakes and braided hair and being carried to bed, wanted to hear her say she was sorry. Wanted to believe it could be fixed. That I could come home and it would be like before. I put the phone down. Because before was built on a lie I just hadn't seen clearly yet. I landed Thursday afternoon. By 5 o'clock, I was standing in my apartment near the base. 1 bedroom. Barely lived in. Still smelling like cardboard and cleaning product. I dropped my duffel by the door, locked the deadbolt, and stood in the silence. Then I heard voices. I turned the corner into the living room. My father was sitting on my couch, legs crossed, one arm stretched along the back like he owned the place. My mother was in my kitchen, unpacking grocery bags. Nadine was leaning against the counter, scrolling her phone. They all looked up at the same time. "Welcome home, soldier." My father smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. Nadine held up a white box. "I brought something from the restaurant. You have to try it." My mother rushed toward me, arms open, tears already falling. "We missed you so much, honey." I didn't move. I looked past them to the kitchen counter where my spare key sat next to a bag of lemons. "How did you get in?" "I used the emergency key," my mother said, still reaching for me. "You gave it to me before you deployed. Remember? In case something happened. In case of emergency." In case the pipes burst. In case I died overseas and someone needed to collect my things. Not for this. I asked you not to come, I said quietly. This isn't an emergency. This is a boundary. Please leave. Nobody moved. The refrigerator hummed. Nadine tried to laugh. Serena, come on. It's just dinner. Please leave, I said again. And I opened the front door. My father didn't move. He looked at the open door. Then back at me. And deliberately, slowly, sat back down. You want to throw your family away over a house? This isn't about a house, Dad. Your grandmother would be ashamed of you. Something hot moved up through my chest. Don't speak for her. I am her son. And I am the person she chose. Her words. Her will. Her choice. His jaw tightened. My mother stepped between us, hands raised, the peacekeeper running her standard play. Serena, please. You don't know what it's been like for us. Your father has been under so much stress. Nadine invested everything she had. If you take this further, you'll destroy your sister's business, your father's reputation, this whole family. You destroyed my trust when you forged my name. The word landed in the room like something dropped from a great height. Forged. My mother flinched. Nadine set the bakery box on the counter. When she spoke, her voice was harder than I expected. Come on, Serena. You were gone. You're always gone. You didn't even come to Grandma's funeral. She spread her hands. What were we supposed to do? Just let a $450,000 house sit there? I looked at my sister. I looked at her carefully. I wasn't at the funeral because Dad told me not to come. Nadine blinked. My mother looked at the floor. My father stood up. He walked toward the door slowly, like he was doing me a favor by leaving. At the threshold, he stopped. Close enough that I could smell his aftershave. If you do what I think you're about to do, he said quietly, you won't have a family to come back to. I met his eyes. I haven't had one in a long time. He walked out. My mother followed, crying. Nadine picked up her box and left without looking at me. I closed the door. I locked it. I called a locksmith. And then I called Rebecca. File everything. I have to pause here because I know how heavy this is. I know some of you are sitting there right now going, how? How could your own family? I asked myself that every single night for months. If this is resonating with you, leave me a comment. Tell me your city and tell me if you've ever had to choose between keeping the peace and protecting yourself. It might be the hardest choice a person can make. I see you. Now keep watching, because what happened in that courtroom? I'm still not sure I have the right words for it. Rebecca filed on Monday. The complaint named Gerald H. Cole and Nadine R. Cole as defendants. The charges, real estate fraud, forgery, conversion of property, and breach of fiduciary duty. Attached was a formal request that the court refer the evidence of criminal forgery to the district attorney's office for prosecution. 2 days later, a process server rang the doorbell at the house where I grew up. I wasn't there for it. But I know exactly how it went, because 3 relatives called me within the hour. My father opened the door. He read the front page of the summons. According to my aunt, who was there for coffee that morning, the color drained from his face so fast she thought he was having a heart attack. My mother came running. She read it over his shoulder and had to sit down on the porch steps. Nadine received her own summons that same afternoon. Named as a co-defendant. A knowing beneficiary of fraudulently obtained funds. My father called me 7 times that evening. I watched every call light up my screen and let it ring. Nadine called once. Her voicemail was shaking. Are you serious? You're suing me? Your own sister? Over a house? Over a house. She still called it that. By the end of the week, the family story machine was running at full speed. My father called every relative he could reach. My mother posted on social media. When your own child turns on you, all you can do is pray. Some relatives called me confused. A few called me angry. I gave each one the same answer. You're welcome to attend the hearing. The truth will be there. The hearing was scheduled for a Tuesday in October. Courtroom 3B. County Courthouse. I arrived 20 minutes early in my Class A dress uniform. Olive jacket. Brass buttons. Captain's bars on the shoulders. My attorney Rebecca had suggested it. You're an active duty officer whose rights under federal law were violated. The uniform tells the court exactly who was harmed. Rebecca met me in the hallway with a leather binder 3 inches thick. Behind her, Major Reeves sat on a bench in civilian clothes. He'd requested leave to attend as a character witness. He nodded once when he saw me. Said nothing. Didn't need to. In the third row near the window, Maggie Soren sat with her hands folded in her lap. White hair pinned back. Blue cardigan my grandmother had given her. A small photo album on the bench beside her. At 9:47, the door opened. My father walked in first. Dark suit, red tie, back straight. But his eyes were bloodshot and his jaw was clenched so tight I could see the muscle jumping. My mother followed, tissue in hand. She scanned the room and found me immediately. Her eyes were swollen. Nadine came last. Dark circles under her eyes. She didn't look at me. My father looked across the aisle at me. At the uniform. Something moved across his face. Surprise, maybe. Or recognition. The daughter he'd dismissed had come back dressed in exactly the thing he told her she'd regret. I held his gaze for 2 seconds. Then I turned to face the bench. Judge Patricia Whitmore entered the courtroom. We all rose. And what she said over the next 2 hours, what was laid out in that room in front of my family and a room full of witnesses, it dismantled everything my father had believed about himself. Every piece of evidence. Every word Maggie Soren said on that witness stand. And the moment my father collapsed into his chair in front of everyone. Part 4 is coming. And I need you to be ready for it. Judge Patricia Whitmore was in her late 50s. Reading glasses on a chain. A voice that carried without effort and left no room for doubt. She reviewed the filings. Then she looked at Rebecca. Counsel for the plaintiff, proceed. Rebecca stood. She didn't rush. Your Honor, the plaintiff, Captain Serena Cole, is the sole named beneficiary of real property located at 1140 Lakeshore Drive, Lake Harlan, per the last will and testament of Dorothy May Cole, deceased. She opened her binder. We will demonstrate that the defendant, Gerald Cole, fabricated a power of attorney bearing the plaintiff's forged signature, had it fraudulently notarized, and used it to sell the property for $450,000 while the plaintiff was deployed overseas on active military orders. She laid out the evidence with the precision of a surgeon arranging instruments. Exhibit A, the forensic handwriting analysis from Dr. Linda Pace, board certified with 20 years of courtroom experience, concluding with 99.7% certainty that the signature on the power of attorney was not Serena Cole's. Exhibit B, my military deployment orders, placed physically in another country on the date of the alleged signing. Exhibit C, the property transfer records, showing the $450,000 deposited directly into an account registered to Nadine R. Cole. Exhibit D, text messages from both defendants demonstrating knowledge and intent. Including Nadine's text to me, the photo of the restaurant sign, "Thanks for your service." Including the Instagram posts where Nadine wrote, "Our whole family came together." Then Rebecca pulled up bank records. The $450,000 hadn't gone to a family account. Hadn't gone to a trust. It had gone directly into Nadine's personal account. Her name. Her account. Ms. Cole didn't just benefit from the fraud. She received the proceeds. She knew the source. And she publicly celebrated it. The defense attorney adjusted his glasses and stood slowly. Your Honor, my client believed he was acting in the best interest of the family estate. There was a verbal understanding. Judge Whitmore looked at him over her glasses. Was there written authorization from the property owner? No, Your Honor. Then there was no authorization. Continue. The defense called my father to the stand. He straightened his tie and walked to the witness box like a man who still believed his own story. My mother wasn't thinking clearly when she wrote that will, he said. The house was always meant to stay in the family. Judge Whitmore looked at him steadily. Mr. Cole, was your mother declared mentally incompetent by any medical professional? No. Did you contest the will during the probate process? No. Then the will stands as written. My father sat down. His shoulders dropped 2 inches. Plaintiff's counsel, do you have additional witnesses? One more, Your Honor. Mrs. Margaret Soren. Maggie stood slowly. She smoothed her grandmother's cardigan and walked to the witness stand with the careful steps of a woman who knew exactly why she was there and what she had to say. Mrs. Soren, how long did you know the decedent, Dorothy Cole? 22 years. She was my neighbor and my dearest friend. In your observation, was Mrs. Cole mentally competent when she drafted her will? Maggie's chin lifted. Dorothy Cole was the sharpest woman I ever knew. She balanced her own checkbook until 3 weeks before she passed. I drove with her to the attorney's office the day she signed that will. She walked in alone. She walked out and told me, it's done. Serena gets the house. Rebecca paused. Did she say anything else? Maggie looked directly at my father. Her voice did not waver. She said, Gerald will try to take it. That's why I'm putting it in Serena's name. Not the family. Serena. The courtroom went still. I saw my aunt press her hand to her mouth. My father stared straight ahead, unblinking. And then Maggie continued. She hadn't been asked. But no one stopped her. There's one more thing. Dorothy tried to call Serena for 2 years before she passed. She'd phone Gerald's house and beg him to pass along the message. He never did. Her voice cracked. Just slightly. Just enough. She told me once, I think Serena has forgotten about me. She died believing that. And it wasn't true. Something small and terrible happened in that room. The air changed. Relatives who had come to support my father shifted in their seats. A cousin I hadn't seen in years looked at Gerald like she was seeing him for the first time. My mother covered her face. Nadine stared at the table. My father didn't move at all. Mrs. Cole was not confused, Maggie said softly. She was afraid. Not of dying. Of what her son would do after she was gone. Judge Whitmore nodded once. Thank you, Mrs. Soren. I need to take a breath right here and so do you. Because what Maggie just said in that courtroom, that my grandmother wasn't confused, she was afraid of what her own son would do after she was gone, that hit me in a way I don't think I'll ever fully recover from. If you're still here, if you haven't looked away from this story, please leave me your city in the comments and tell me what you would have done in my shoes. Would you have filed? Would you have walked away? Tell me honestly. I need to know. And now, the judge's ruling. Judge Whitmore took 15 minutes to review her notes. No one in that courtroom spoke. My mother's quiet crying was the only sound. Rhythmic. Thin. Like a clock winding down. The judge removed her glasses. Set them on the bench. Looked at my father. The court finds clear and convincing evidence that Gerald H. Cole fabricated a power of attorney bearing the forged signature of Serena Cole, had it fraudulently notarized by a licensed notary with whom he had a prior professional relationship, and used that document to sell real property belonging to the plaintiff while the plaintiff was deployed overseas on active military service. She paused, and the silence in that room was enormous. This court is deeply troubled that the defendant chose to exploit a window of time when the plaintiff, an active duty service member deployed overseas, was physically unable to monitor or protect her own property. She looked down at the documents. The court orders the following. First, the power of attorney is declared fraudulent. The resulting sale is deemed the product of forgery. As the property has been transferred to a buyer who acted in good faith, with no knowledge of the fraud, the court will not unwind that transaction. Instead, the defendants shall pay full restitution of $450,000 to the plaintiff. Second, additional damages in the amount of $85,000, covering loss of property use, legal costs, and compensatory damages. Third, the court will forward its findings to the district attorney's office to assist in the criminal investigation. Forgery of a legal instrument is a felony under applicable state law. She looked at my father one final time. Mr. Cole. The law does not bend for good intentions. And what you did shows no good intentions at all. Richard Gerald Cole sat very still. His attorney leaned over to whisper something. Gerald didn't respond. His hands, which had been folded on the table, slowly opened. His head dropped forward. And then his whole body sagged. Shoulders. Spine. Everything. He slumped into his chair like someone had cut the strings holding him up. My mother cried out. Nadine jumped to her feet. But my father wasn't having a medical emergency. He was having something far worse. He was a man who had controlled everything his entire life. His career, his household, his daughters, his mother's legacy. And in one afternoon, in front of his family and a room full of witnesses, he had lost all of it. The courtroom emptied slowly. My father was helped to his feet by his attorney and the bailiff. He walked out with one hand on the wall for balance. He moved like a man 20 years older than he had been that morning. I was gathering my things when my mother appeared in the hallway. She had stopped crying. Her face was tight and blotched and furious. Are you happy now? You've destroyed your father. I looked at her. The woman who had used my emergency key to ambush me. The woman who had watched her husband forge my name and said nothing. The woman who had posted about her ungrateful child online while I was building this case 6,000 miles away. He destroyed himself, Mom. I just brought evidence. She opened her mouth. Closed it. And stepped aside. Down the hallway, Nadine stood alone. Gripping the strap of her purse with both hands, knuckles white. The restaurant, she whispered. My restaurant. I walked past them both through the double doors and into the October sun. Maggie was waiting by the stone bench outside. She stood when she saw me and opened her arms. I stepped into them and pressed my face into that blue cardigan, my grandmother's cardigan. And I cried. Not from victory. There was no victory here. Just a woman getting back what should never have been taken. At a cost no one should ever have to pay. She would be so proud of you, Maggie said into my hair. Across the parking lot, Major Reeves leaned against his car, arms folded. He caught my eye and gave one single nod. Nothing more was needed. I drove home alone. No radio. I pulled my grandmother's photograph from my wallet, the two of us on the dock when I was 10 years old, and I propped it on the dashboard. And I sat there a long time. In the weeks after the hearing, the district attorney opened a formal criminal investigation. The notary folded almost immediately. The restaurant closed. My father put the family home up for sale. And Nadine moved to another city. I didn't celebrate any of it. You can't celebrate when your family burns down, even when they started the fire themselves. But I did one thing. One thing that I think my grandmother would have been proud of. Part 5 is coming. And this is where I tell you what it all meant. Small towns have long memories and short fuses. Within 2 weeks of the hearing, everyone in my parents' circle knew. Not because I told them. I didn't post anything. Didn't make a single call. The courtroom had done the work. A reporter from the county paper had published a short item in the court proceedings section. A civil fraud case. A forged power of attorney. The sale of a deceased woman's property. No names in the article. But in a town of 11,000 people, everyone knew who lived on Lakeshore Drive. The phone calls came in a slow, steady wave. My Aunt Janet was first. She was weeping when she called. I knew something was wrong. I should have said something. I'm so sorry, Serena. It's okay, Aunt Janet. You didn't know. I should have asked. Cousins. Old family friends. People who'd been at my grandmother's funeral. Some left short awkward voicemails. Heard what happened. Thinking of you. A few admitted they had called me ungrateful before the hearing, before they knew the truth, and were ashamed of themselves. I responded to each one the same way. Thank you. I appreciate you reaching out. But I need time. Not everyone was kind. 2 of Nadine's friends sent me messages full of words like jealous and selfish and cruel. I read the first lines and deleted them. They didn't know me. They knew Nadine's version. One text stood out from all the rest. An old neighbor of my parents, a man named Frank, who had known my grandmother since the 80s. He wrote, "Your grandmother was a good woman who raised a good granddaughter. I'm sorry it came to this." I saved that one. I read it on nights when I wasn't sure if what I had done was worth the wreckage. It always was. The financial consequences moved in a straight line. The notary, Gary Parsons, had folded almost immediately after the civil ruling. His cooperation statement was plain. He'd stamped the document on the strength of a 20-year acquaintance and the assumption that a former bank manager wouldn't lie to him. His notary commission was suspended pending full review. Nadine couldn't pay the restitution. Dot's table had never turned a real profit. It had been open 4 months and was hemorrhaging money the whole time. The equipment was leased. The commercial lease was non-transferable. Every dollar poured into that restaurant was a dollar stolen from me, built on a document that never should have existed, decorated with our grandmother's name that she hadn't earned the right to use. 6 weeks after the ruling, Nadine listed the restaurant equipment for sale. The sign came down on a Thursday. Maggie Soren drove past and called me that evening. "That green sign with your grandmother's name on it," she said. "It's gone." "Good," I said. And I meant it. My father's situation was worse. The criminal defense attorney's fees were climbing fast. His retirement savings, the ones he'd guarded on his spreadsheets all those years, were bleeding out. He and my mother put the family home on the market. The house where I grew up. The house where he sat at the head of every table and decided what happened to everyone in it. They moved into a 2-bedroom rental apartment on the east side of town. My mother sent me one final text. "I hope you can live with yourself." I read it. I didn't respond. I saved it. Habit by now. Nadine moved to another city. Got a job managing someone else's restaurant. No ownership. No sign with her name on it. No posts about legacy. I didn't celebrate any of this. There is nothing to celebrate when your family burns down and you are the one holding the match, even when the fire was their fault. But I did one thing. I took a portion of the restitution and contacted my old high school. I set up a small scholarship fund for graduating seniors planning to serve. Military, Peace Corps, AmeriCorps, anything that took them away from home to do something larger than themselves. I named it the Dorothy May Cole Memorial Scholarship. Not because I wanted anyone to know. Because my grandmother always said, "Help the ones who have no one in their corner." She would have liked that. Right here, right now, I want to say something directly to you. If you are watching this and there is something heavy sitting on your chest, something you haven't said out loud yet, something that was taken from you or used against you or signed away without your permission, I want you to hear this. Tell me in the comments. And if you've dealt with something similar, share your story. You're not alone. Subscribe for more stories about standing your ground and reclaiming your life. I read every single comment. Every single one. You are not dramatic. You are not overreacting. And you do not have to swallow it just because someone who shares your blood says you should. I drove to Lake Harlan on a Saturday in November. I hadn't planned it. I'd been running errands. The ordinary machinery of a life being rebuilt. And I found myself on the county road that leads to the lake, following it the way your body follows a path your mind has tried to forget. The house was still there. New paint. Soft gray, where the white used to be. New fence. The porch railing had been replaced and the old wooden swing was gone. In the front yard, the new owners had planted sunflowers, tall and heavy-headed, leaning toward the road. I pulled over and cut the engine. The dock was visible through the side yard. Same shape. Same weathered wood. The water behind it was flat and silver, catching the November light. I sat there for a long time. I remembered the summer I was 12. My grandmother at the end of that dock, bare feet in the water, a paperback open in her lap. I had asked her why she loved the lake so much. She hadn't looked up from her book. Because water always finds its way, Serena. You can dam it. You can divert it. But it always finds the path forward. I looked at the sunflowers. They hadn't been there when it was ours. Nothing about that property was mine anymore. Not the gray paint. Not the new fence. Not the dock. But the memory of her sitting there, feet in the water, telling me to keep moving? That was mine. No forged signature could touch it. No courtroom could award it to someone else. I started the engine. Pulled back onto the road. The radio came on. Some country song I didn't know. A woman's voice singing about going home. I rolled down the window and let the lake air fill the car. 6 months passed. I stayed at Fort Liberty. I was promoted to a new logistics position I'd put in for before deployment and forgotten about in the chaos. The Army doesn't care about your family drama. It cares about performance. I showed up every day and let the work steady me. I rented a small place near the lake. 1 bedroom. Screened porch. A dock shared with 2 other units. On Saturday mornings, I sat there with coffee and watched the herons work the shallows. It wasn't Lake Harlan. It wasn't my grandmother's house. But it had water. And quiet. And the sound of nothing going wrong. I didn't contact my parents. My mother mailed 2 handwritten letters. I opened them and read them. They were full of hurt and accusation. In the second one, a thin thread of something that might have been regret. I put them in a drawer. My father was negotiating a plea deal. I let Rebecca handle the details. That was enough. Nadine was in another city. Working. Silent. The person I spoke to most was Maggie Soren. She called every Sunday afternoon. We talked about small things. Her garden. My work. The weather. Sometimes she told me stories about my grandmother. Sometimes she just listened. I'm not trying to replace Dorothy, she told me once. I know, I said. But I'm here as long as you need. I also joined a veteran support group that met Wednesday evenings near the base. I didn't share my story for the first month. But when I did, briefly, without self-pity, several people in that circle nodded. They'd lost things too. Different things. But the shape of the loss was familiar. One woman said to me afterward, "You didn't lose your family in combat." She looked at me steadily. "You lost them at a notary's desk." I never forgot that. The letter arrived through Maggie. Nadine had mailed it to Maggie's address because she didn't have my new one. 2 handwritten pages, front and back, in Nadine's tight slanted script. Maggie called before forwarding it. I didn't read it. But I wanted you to know it was coming. I opened it that evening on the screened porch with the last light coming through the trees. Nadine didn't start with an apology. She started with a confession. I knew the money came from the house. I knew Dad forged your signature. I told myself it didn't matter because you were gone and the army takes care of you anyway. But that's a lie I told myself so I wouldn't feel guilty. The truth is I didn't want to feel guilty. So I made it your problem instead of mine. She wrote about the restaurant. About how it failed not because of the lawsuit but because she had never had a real plan. About how she had used our grandmother's name as a brand without ever earning the right to it. She didn't ask for forgiveness. That surprised me. You don't owe me anything, she wrote at the end. I just needed you to know that I know what I did. And I know it was wrong. I read the letter twice. Sat with it. Listened to the frogs down by the water. I didn't know if she meant it. Maybe she did. Maybe it was another performance. But I realized it didn't matter, not right now. My healing was not dependent on her sincerity. My peace was not a door she could open or close. I wrote back. One paragraph. I read your letter. Thank you for writing it. I'm not ready for more than that. Take care of yourself, Nadine. I sealed it. Stamped it. Drove it to the post office the next morning. It wasn't an open door. But it wasn't a wall either. It was a boundary. And boundaries, I had learned, don't have to be angry to be real. So that's my story. I'm not telling it because I want your sympathy. I'm not telling it because I want you to hate my family. I'm telling it because I know that some of you listening right now have a knot in your stomach because you recognize something in what I've said. Maybe it's a parent who treats your silence as permission. Maybe it's a sibling who takes and calls it family. Maybe it's someone you love who made a decision about your life, your money, your property, your future. And when you pushed back, they told you that you were the problem. If that's you, I want to say this directly. You are not ungrateful for protecting yourself. You are not selfish for saying no. And you are not alone. My grandmother taught me that water always finds its way. I lost her lake house. I lost the family, or what I thought was a family. But I found my own path. It runs through a small apartment near the water, through a courtroom where I stood in my uniform and told the truth, through a Sunday phone call with an old woman in a blue cardigan who promised my grandmother she would look out for me. Setting a boundary isn't punishment. It's self-respect with a return address. I don't know what happens next with my father. With Nadine. With my mother. Maybe one day we'll sit in the same room again. Maybe we won't. But I know this. Whatever happens, it will happen on terms I have chosen. Not terms that were forged in my name while I was 6,000 miles away, serving a country that at least had the decency to put its agreements in writing. If you've ever set a boundary, or if you're working up the courage to set one, tell me about it in the comments below. Which moment hit you the hardest? Was it the judge's ruling? Was it Maggie on that witness stand? Was it the drive back to the lake? Drop your answer below. And if you want more stories about people who chose courage over comfort, who found justice where they deserved it, and who built something real from the wreckage, you know where to find me. Thank you for listening. Thank you for staying all the way to the end. And thank you, I hope I made you proud.